school is almost out and your struggling reader is still struggling. So, what if this summer was actually the answer? Summer is a great time to get your child the help that they need because their cognitive load is not as bombarded and they have the brain energy to map their literacy brain. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the next piece of our Reading That Actually Sticks series. It's called Decoding. And once you understand it, a lot of what you've been seeing at home is going to start to make a lot of sense. All right, let's get into it. All right, so we're going to jump into part 2 of our series, which is going to cover decoding. If you missed part 1, we discussed phonemic awareness, and you could go ahead and find that video in the YouTube channel and give that a watch. All right, so let's get into decoding. So let's first define what decoding is. It's the ability to use letter sound knowledge to read words accurately. All right, so it's a very technical definition, but basically it's our ability to use that letter sound knowledge that we have to be able to read the word that's on the page, right? And so what we're doing is we're connecting the sounds that we know, which is the phonemic awareness part that we discussed in part 1, we're connecting those sounds to the print that we see on the page. And so that print can be represented in a number of different ways. So we can have one letter, we can have a combination of letters, and how that sounds and what that looks like are all the different aspects and complexities, we'll call it, of our English language. Okay, so let's move into the next part. So we actually have 3 different sections that we're going to be talking about when it comes to decoding. So we're going to talk about that letter sound association that we've been bringing up. And we're going to go into actual decoding and then into sight word recognition. Okay, so letter sound association is first. Let's define what this is. So letter sound association is the ability to connect a written letter or letters to its sound. So it's pretty simple. It's just sound and then letter or letters, right? We just have a big fancy word for it. Letter sound association. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of this, right? So C, right? We have the letter C, and we know C can make the K sound. Well, it can also make the S sound. That's part of letter sound association. It's not just that we have different a combination of letters and whatnot, but we also have some letters that make many different sounds. So in this case, it's, is it going to make the K sound or is it going to make the S sound? Well, it's actually the next letter that determines that. So this next letter actually ends up being an A, right? So that A is going to make the A sound. When C comes before A, O, or U, it is usually going to make the K sound. And when C comes before E, I, or Y, it's actually, most of the time, it's going to make a S sound. So that's one of those pieces of knowledge that is taught in the context of structured literacy. But in this case, it happens to be the A. So we know that the C is going to make a K sound, and then the A is going to make the A sound, and then the T is going to make the T sound, right? There's only one sound that T can make. And we put all of that together, and we're able to read the word cat, right? So I have to know my letter sound association. I have to know that in order to be able to read the word. If I see the letter and I'm not connecting the correct sound to that, then I'm not going to read it accurately. Or if I don't know the generalizations, like what I just explained, like the different sounds of C, and if I don't know when it's going to make that sound, then that can also impact things as well. So letter sound association is where decoding begins. I have to be able to know the sound of the letters in order to be able to read the word, right? Okay, next is decoding. So decoding is the ability to use that letter sound association or knowledge that we just talked about to sound out and read unfamiliar words. So if I had the word up on the screen here, like this SHIP word that I'm focusing on, so decoding is, well, I'm going to break this into its parts. Now, I know because I've been taught this, because my brain has been methodically and taught this concept, and I've practiced this concept over and over and over. So it is now cemented in my brain that I am recognizing that SH combination. That's a digraph. When two letters are stuck together and make that one sound, sh, then we call that a digraph. If it's three letters stuck together, we call that a trigraph, right? So I've seen that. This is not my first exposure to it. I would have had to have been directly taught that that sh is making that sh sound. Okay, so I'm recognizing that, right? And I'm able to produce the sound that makes the sh sound. And then I know, okay, I is going to make the it sound, and that's mainly because it's followed by a consonant and it's in one syllable word. So that makes that vowel make its short sound. Another generalization concept that I'm taught during structured literacy. So sh, and then it, and then I know my last sound is going to be the p sound, and then I put that together and it makes the word ship, right? So that's the process of decoding. This seems so simple to people who have been reading for quite some time, but for somebody who is completely new to this, think of your first grader, think of your kindergartner, and they're just really starting to understand this and explore this. Well, think of it maybe as your fourth or fifth grader who hasn't 100% solidified these literacy tasks, these literacy skills. They're not 100% being able to decode this either. So they're looking at this word, and instead of decoding it like the sh and the it and the put, instead they're looking at this with the S has a little squiggle and the H has a stick with a little bit of a hump to it, and then we have a stick with a dot on the top. So the actual shape of the word is, oh, I've seen that word before. Oh, that word is ship, right? Maybe as we're reading, we recognize it and we see it, and at a very quick glance, we confuse it with the word chip, right? CHIP. Just that one little change in the squiggle, and that is somebody that is reading by shape, by whole word, instead of actually decoding the word. And funny enough, that's actually one of the reasons why we test using nonsense words. So those are made up words. And so a lot of times we test decoding ability with those made up words because we don't want students to have come in with some knowledge ahead of time, having memorized what some words look like. We want them to be able to actually decode the word. So in any case, this is decoding. Let's move. Oh, and decoding is where independent reading begins. So if we're able to decode and we're able to do it at a faster rate, which is where fluency comes in, then we actually have some cognitive space in our brains to be able to comprehend what we're reading. This is what independent reading is all about. So it's very important that we solidify our decoding strategies. Okay, so now let's look at the last word. The last word is sight word recognition. So there's actually a couple of different things when it comes to sight word recognition. So I'll explain this in just a second. But the one thing I did want to mention is that sometimes we talk about sight word recognition in terms of decoding a word over and over again, like enough times where our brain has put that into basically like a memory bank. That's a little different than what I'm about to explain right now. So your brain actually stores words that it's decoded in a very special place that is efficient when it's going to read, which is what gives me the ability to read these words on this page pretty quickly. But what I'm going to talk about right now is sight words that do not follow the pattern that they're supposed to follow. So yes, we do have these words that exist in the English language. Mainly they're because they come from other languages, or there's a historical root for the word, like it was used a long time ago and the spelling was different, but the spelling changed and the sound never did. There's a lot of different historical aspects to why we have sight words today, but we do have them. Now, I know there's a common assumption that like 50% of the English language is exceptions, and it's truly not. Actually, a lot of the exceptions that we call or we've called exceptions are actually generalizations. So the amount of actual sight words in our language is far fewer than we actually think. But let's talk about this because these are certain words that can sometimes trip us up if we're trying to decode the word. So, specifically, sight word recognition is the ability to read non decodable words accurately and automatically without having to sound them out every time. So, let's look at this particular word. So, if you understand that a silent E on the end of the word usually bops the vowel and makes it say its name, usually makes it say its long vowel sound. So, by using that rule or that generalization, I would say that this word says have. Now, we know that this is not have, this is actually the word have. So there's actually a history behind this. Not history, excuse me, but there's a common generalization, we'll just call it. So English words do not end in the letter V. They just don't. So this is something that has kind of come about as the English language had formed. So English words do not end in V. So in order to make this say have, we would want to take off that letter E, but that can't exist. So we put a silent E on the end. There we go. Now we've solved the problem. So now we can actually say the word have. We can spell it have, and we'll just put a little E on it so that, we're not violating our rule of not ending a word in the letter V. So that's actually how we came up with this particular sight word. So it's a word that we have to just remember. And when we are teaching this to our kids, very often we use like a heart word kind of strategy, or sometimes we do certain letters in different colors because it'll help the brain to be able to see that a little bit differently. So, for example, with this one, we would put that letter A in a different color because instead of making the A sound like it would with a silent E on the end, instead it's making its A sound. So we put that in a different color to say, hey, this is the one that's acting a little bit strange. And that visual cue just can sometimes be enough for the brain to remember that and go, oh, yeah, that's right. That's the word have. So, sight word recognition. So here we go. There's a little visual to show you the E is bopping the A. Okay. So here it is in a sentence. And it's also important for the students to see that in a sentence. They can do flashcards, which is okay with sight words, but they need to also be able to see it in context because sometimes they'll remember it on a flashcard, but then they'll forget it once it's in context of a sentence. So yes, use those flashcards, but then have them read it in a sentence that they can decode. I have a pet cat. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it looks like in the context of a sentence. All right. So, letter sound association, decoding, sight word recognition, these are all important skills that we need in order to be able to fluently read words in a sentence and then be able to understand those words. All right, so this is the end of decoding. Next week, we're going to go into spelling and word structure. Very, very fun topic. Remember that we are here for you if you would like to reach out to us. So we offer free consultations. We'll walk through the issues that your child is having and see what the practical next steps would be for them. Our heart is to help these kids be able to read and write and spell with ease. And the methods that we use allow them to be able to do that. So if your child is struggling, feel free to reach out to us. Our website is there. You see the email. The number is textable. You can call. If you go on the website, there's actually a link to sign up for a free consultation. So until next week, hope you have a great week.